Hey everybody, welcome into another episode of the Danny Rumph Classic Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Cohn, and today we're joined by two awesome content creators, Isaiah Nathaniel and CJ Wolfe. First, Isaiah joins us in studio to talk about his content creation journey with MadOptics. He talks about basketball and life and family and how all those things intertwine. Super excited to have MadOptics, Isaiah Nathaniel, in studio today for the Danny Rumph Classic Podcast. Isaiah, thank you so much for being here, man.
The pleasure is mine anytime in the company of you. It's a good day, my man.
Thank you. I want to start by throwing something at you. When you were in college, your Delaware State head coach, Greg Jackson, told you, son, the way you are on the court will be the same way that you are in life. When you hear that, where does your head go?
It goes to gratitude. It goes to your upbringing. It goes to thinking about all the people that paved the way for you to be where you are. I look at how my life has turned out with basketball and without basketball, and it goes a lot to that statement of the way that you are on this court, irregardless of how it ends up, meaning what? Irregardless if you're in the NBA, irregardless if you're overseas, irregardless of where you end up professionally, you still have the same grit level of determination. You still have the same work ethic, getting up in the morning, going to practice, going to work, going to do anything with a passion. That same effort, that same mentality is what you carry into life. And I can say that that is a very true statement for me, because the way I attack work, the way I attack some of the things that I need to do is using that same effort that I gave on the court.
You touched on it a little bit there, but so much of your success, both in basketball, professionally, it all sort of intertwines in a really interesting way, and a lot of that's what we're going to get into here today. I want to start with your basketball journey. Do you remember some of your earlier basketball memories? Take us through a little bit about what your basketball journey looked like.
It's an interesting basketball journey. It's a little obsessive,
Okay.
in some nature, in some way, because once I put the ball in my hand, it was, you couldn't take it away from me. And it became an obsession that drove me to have that mentality that we just talked about, which is the determination, the grit. And coming from Philadelphia specifically, this is the way that some of us think that we can get out. And learning that there are alternate opportunities, but using the game of basketball is very creative. And to your point, the intertwinedness of how the game can be, being in media, being in production, photography, videography, sideline reporting. The game of basketball is so wide variety that you just don't have to shoot or dribble to make it in this business. So for me, the collaboration, the intentionality of my careers, and I'm using S in the specific of it being an S, my careers is important and significant and poignant enough that I think the game of basketball in my early days did that for me. So let me explain my early days.
Yeah, please.
I think that was the original
question.
question.
And you used the word obsessiveness. Sort of unravel what that looked like for us, too.
Yeah, what it was making sure that every day I did 1,000 jump shots, making sure every day I did 1,000 toe raises. So back in the day, we did toe raises, we did calf raises, we did sit-ups and push-ups. You know, we didn't have trainers or anything like that. We had to go to Mallory to do some of these things, and making sure I did toe touches and touch the backboard. We did a lot of, before you could dunk, you did the slap the backboard kind of nature. So these are kind of the obsessive things that I did. Getting up in the morning, some of the things that my friends from Mallory, the Mallory boys, or my close friends, they would know that even if it was snowing on the ground, I would still go out, making sure if it was hot. I did obsessive things, stupid things when you think about it, is when it was 90 degrees like it is when we're shooting this interview, I would walk in full-length winter coats just to sweat, to keep body fat down.
Yeah.
So, I took it that seriously. So that's some of my early days. I'll touch on it again if you want me to, but the early days was really just preparation that I love to do that turned into a lifelong passion of both the game and careers outside of it.
Is it true that you grew 4 inches in one, was it summer?
Summer.
What was that like?
Well, it was expensive for my mom and dad
Yeah,
because they
yeah,
had to buy all new clothes and we didn't have a lot of money. So
yeah.
that was really expensive. And thankful for camps like the Rasheed Wallace camp, which that people don't realize what that does for any city youth. So Rasheed Wallace would have a camp, and I'm going to go back to the
Yeah,
story. But
please, yeah.
Rasheed Wallace camp was he at the Bill Ellerby Court now at Simon Grants, and he would get counselors in high school and things like that. My high school coach was Coach Biff Haviland Harper, and some of the things that he would do is in the summer, so that you can continue to stay in shape, you would be camp counselor, but it was a paid thing. So we got like $200, $300 for a week, and Rasheed Wallace camp was ran all through summer. So you were getting like $800, $1,000 to work this camp, and then afterwards, because camp will be over like 3 or 4, you played in the gym with the same counselors. So it was a way of staying in touch with the game and also getting money. And I used that money to buy the clothes for the next upcoming year. So growing 4 inches in the summer was really a treat for me because now my skills that I had at a smaller size, I just transitioned that into my next year of game. And that's when the explosion of Isaiah Nathaniel at Central High School really started to come, because that 4 inches really did help in playing the game.
It was a no, it was a number of years ago, but what does it feel like to grow 4 inches in one summer? Did you realize, after a month, like, oh shoot, maybe I grew like an inch or two, or did you take me through that summer? What that was like, just from like a growth standpoint, I guess.
The first dunk,
Yeah,
that's when I knew something was different. 'Cause 3 weeks ago,
I was gonna say I know you remember it well, so tell me the dunk.
So the dunk was at Cedric Playground. So for anyone that doesn't know Mount Airy, it was at Germantown and Cedric, and we called it Cedric Playground. So growing up in Uptown, we went to Cedric and went to Mallory. Then we went to some of the other ones in the neighborhood, but those were my two. And I was all summer just trying to dunk, just trying to do my calf raises. And I had did my calf raises the night before. They felt really good. Went out the next day. We were playing with, I think it was Huff out there, some of the guys from the neighborhood, and just went up 2 hands and just dunked. And it was like, where did that come from?
Yeah, I couldn't do this before.
Yeah, I couldn't do this before. I thought it was the calf raises from the night before. And the other
Yeah.
funny thing about it, I know a lot of people will remember this, is I had these shoes where the tip of the shoe was like your strength and conditioning. I can't remember what the name of those shoes were. We'll have to look it up and probably put it on the screen. But they were like you walked on your tippy toes, and they were
Oh,
to strengthen
working
your
your
calves. So
calves,
I
yeah.
had just gotten those, and I was like, oh, these things really work. So I could have been an endorsement for that. But the first time I dunked, it was really incredible to accomplish a goal like that. And then after that, it was kind of a wrap.
What do you remember about the explosion of Isaiah Nathaniel, the high school basketball player? What are some of your memories there?
I was a late bloomer,
Yeah.
and what I remember about it was getting to compete with guys that you thought and knew were good. So I remember the Brandon Garys. I remember the OT. I remember the Fatties, the DJs. I remember all of these guys that were good. And the Strawberry Mansion teams, the Zyke Smiths, the Franklin Learning Center teams. And to be able to compete with them as a late bloomer and then starting to hold my own, that's what I kind of remember about the explosion. And then having, I think it was 11 or 12 games with 20 or more points leading into the playoffs. So that was when I really knew that I was starting to understand the game at a different level. And it became more details to me than just shooting, meaning what are my attack angles? Meaning, am I taking less dribbles? One of the things I tried to instill is that you don't need 17 dribbles to get from the baseline to baseline. You only need 3, right? And so if I can use 3 dribbles to get from baseline to baseline, why am I taking 7 to get from half court to a layup?
Yeah.
Finding the right ways, catching the ball in scoring threat positions. These are the details that I became obsessive with, and that turned into 11, 12 games with 20, 24 points and went into the playoffs. And unfortunately, we lost to Bartram that year, but really was exciting to see that growth. It created a lot of arrogance. I won't lie and say it didn't. And then, playing now, it's like, I think everyone knows Isaiah is a good player.
I mean, yeah, it's interesting to hear that just the way your mind shifted a little bit to become so much more methodical in the way you approach basketball is fascinating and a huge part of, figuring out that next step, being able to play college basketball. I want to dive in a little bit about, use the careers plural, sort of peeling off into two. You work in healthcare as your day job and content creation. Start with the content creation. How did that start? Was that something that you sort of had a creative mind for growing up? When were you sort of introduced to that?
I've always had an engineering mindset, and one of the things about an engineering mindset is you like the details, you like the tech, you like understanding transistors. And, for people around here, transistors is the chips that run your phones and chips and things of that nature. And so for me, getting into content creation, it was started by my uncle, and he had Diamond Eye Sports, and he was well known in Baltimore and Philadelphia area for creating content with his camera. And he said, "Hey, come out, shoot with me." He was doing a lot of things with ESPN that extended to us. He would get a lot of cover shoots, and we just enjoyed the camaraderie that we got with hanging with family and capturing content that people then liked. Then it turned into a passion because in any camera that you pick up, there's technology in it. And figuring out that technology, going from auto to manual, is a process that invoked learning and invoked thought process to make sure you get the lighting right. People think you just turn on the camera and everyone is the perfect lighting. No, that takes thought process. So for me, thinking is very important. Intelligence is subsequent to that, and then execution of that. So putting all three of those together, just a camera in front of it, is where I really fell in love with content creation.
If growing 4 inches in a summer was sort of your move in basketball that maybe helped usher in this time of being more obsessive and interested in the details that helped your basketball game, was there something similar on the content side that ushered you into being more interested in the nitty-gritty of learning about the details of photography and videography?
That's a very good question. Probably the first time I've asked that question. The best way for me to answer that is learning at any level intrigues me.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is in content creation, it's how do I get this image to tell a story that I don't have to speak the story? We call it the MadOptics moments for a reason.
Yeah.
It means that the content is telling the story before I even have to talk about it. And the way that the moment is created, it could be in sequential terms, meaning it could be what started the move to get the dunk.
Yeah.
That's what I like. We call it in content creation B-roll. For me, it's the story before the story. It's the pre-roll. And so for me, content creation is that story within the story. It's speaking without me having to open my mouth. And so I really like content creation for that.
I really want to get into the content that you had done for the Rumph and how that's sort of the story that's really the historical side of the Rumph is so much told through pictures and videos that say MadOptics in the corner, but just to sort of lay the groundwork of context, how did MadOptics, a family company, kind of come together? Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, so that is one of two current businesses that are family owned. They're all in this kind of space. The first is Calcom Technologies, and that one, and I'll talk about this. So I have three children. One is Caleb, one is Madison, and one is Meadow. So when Caleb was born, I was a consultant, and my first company was called IGS Computer Services. And then once Caleb was born, I said I want to give something to my son to be able to have for him as sort of a legacy. He can take it or not, do whatever. And so Calcom Technologies was born. His name is spelled C-A-L-E-B. Calcom is C-A-L-C-O-M Technologies, and that's a full-service IT consulting business. Then MadOptics came about when my second child was born, Madison.
Yeah.
So I take the first three letters, so it's M-A-D, Optics for the Camera of Optics Productions was born. Now I have a third. Her name is Meadow. I think it's going to be a music. So we'll get into it. You'll ask me like what have we done that nobody actually knows? We actually have a full level CD. We have a full CD. We have full LP that we never released, and it's a family album. And an interesting story about that, and I'm going to get it back to you, is my mom's an excellent singer, and she actually has an album that she cut with a group. And so music is a part of our family. And so we have a family album, a family CD rather, or LP, whatever is the new age term that we have that we've never released.
Oh, this is fascinating. I didn't know about any of this.
At some point, we will release this CD, and there's one song on there. It's called For My City.
Uh-huh.
And we might release it for the Rumph Classic at one year.
I love
it.
But
it's a Philly song.
And the music side of this, the music venture we'll start with, is it MEA?
MEA.
Meadow's a beautiful name. I love that name.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. I didn't know that about you, Isaiah. I love that. So I want to pivot a little bit into the Rumph and how MadOptics was able to, again, sort of capture so much of the Danny Rumph Classic. Take me into your first, because you were around the Rumph before MadOptics started, and then, content became a big part of your role in that space. Take me through that transition, how you got involved, and how it turned into content.
Got involved very, very in the early years as an actual player. And that's a funny story that, we talk about if you want to.
Please, yeah. I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear about those early days of you getting a jersey.
Yeah. So it was funny because I was in college, just coming out of college, and Mike's like, hey, I need you to play tomorrow. And anybody that knows Mike, he calls you the last minute, doesn't care what you got going on. It's like, yo, be here tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I got a jersey for you. What are you talking about, Mike?
Yeah,
what are we doing here? And so I'm knee deep in training and trying to see what's going to happen with basketball for me. And it's like, man, just come play. It's for Danny, and we're just getting a couple of the guys together. I walk in the gym, and you got Hakeem Warwick there. You got Deontay Christmas there. You got DJ there. It's like a thing.
He didn't just round dudes up off the street.
No, it's like me, Sharif Hanford, Huff, Sharif Bray. And he's like, all right, you're playing on a Rumph team. Yes, all right, what are we going to do here? So it was so funny because I'm not going to say who we beat, and, I don't want to start any Philly wars here, but we dominated quite a few of the players there, and, Isaiah did pretty well in some of those games. I think we got the footage to prove it, too.
That's awesome. So, then MadOptics becomes a big part. At post-playing days, MadOptics becomes a big part of your, your role in that space. Yeah. What was sort of the time frame that you spent, that you got started with photo and video around the Rumph?
I think it's around 2013, 14 that we got started, and it was like, all right, I'm not in playing shape anymore, but I still want to continue with my friends, want to continue and making sure this gets to where it needs to be. And photos and creative content was the next chapter, one of the next careers in my life. And so it's like, hey, we need to do this. And if you want to give back to anything, give back to what you're passionate about. And so we started to give back in creative content. And at the time, it wasn't many. It was Ball for Life, I believe. And then Jamie and I, at some point, were just one or two in the content creation. And Jamie, I just want to speak a little bit about Jamie. Jamie has done some amazing things with the camera. And the city of Philadelphia is really indebted, specifically from a sports lens, to what that genius has done. And I remember it was just him and I capturing a lot of the footage and editing and putting it out. And he won't admit it, but we used to always have this little silent competition who would get out their video first.
Oh, yeah?
Because the person who got it out first, it gets shared all across the place. But I'm really proud of Jamie. I'm really proud of guys like you, Murmo, and the team that you guys have assembled to help create the content. Because before, it would take hours to render and get this content from a camera to a computer to then on YouTube.
Yeah.
That was the medium that we had before. And to see where it is now, where people like Allen Iverson can walk in Bones, or Jason Tatum, these guys can walk in and the content's up in 3 minutes. So
Yeah.
it's really a credit to dedication, a credit to the people that had an idea and had people around them that cared enough to make sure it continued.
As a quick interjection, I would implore anyone listening or watching to go listen to our interview. We had Jamie Boyer on the podcast last year for the first season. He's, again, you spoke very highly of him. He's done a lot of really great work. Take us into what that time was like when it was you two, and then sort of how things evolved from there. Again, 2 cameras in the gym, maybe a third into, now what it's become.
It was process intensive.
Yeah.
It was high stress, but it was fun because you knew the city appreciated it. And you knew that it's what our city needed. Some of the things that we always talk about is people really respecting Philadelphia for its basketball grid. It's not just New York. It's not D.C. It's not the other areas, Baltimore. Philadelphia has some of the greatest basketball players in the country. Kyle Lowry is an example of this. The Morris twins are an example of this. They represent us well. And so what we were trying to do, at least from my perspective, is make sure this content got out. You saw that these guys were coming back. The twins came back every year. You can't understate that. These are guys that have full lives, but they made it a point to come back. We had people like Rasul Butler play. These are the moments and creativity that you had to be there to experience, and then for you to see it, that is just something that's special to me, and that's why I'm always there, always baseline. Kemba knows where my seat is. He makes sure my seat is ready for me because that's what I'm going to do every first weekend in August, no matter where I am in the country at this point.
You've had so much success across, again, multiple careers that, would have flourished in any capacity, in any circumstance without the existence of the Rumph. But what do you feel like the Rumph has both done to help you, but also how you've been able to give back and sort of talk through what it's meant to your world?
It's very personal to me. It's very personable to me. It's very personal to me because the intertwinedness of basketball and me being, for my true day job, a vice president, chief information officer for a healthcare company in Philadelphia, there's so many parallels because I see people walking into our health centers with diabetes, with heart issues, with A1Cs being out of whack. And if you can catch these things early, you prevent things like Hank Gathers, you prevent things like Danny, and those situations. Ultimately, that's what we're really trying to do, is save the next bright star.
Yeah.
So for me, there's so many parallels because if I take a moment to explain Delaware Valley Community Health in Philadelphia, we're a very large healthcare organization, and we see about 50,000 patients per year, and they're underserved. And what underserved means that they may have insurance, or they may have no insurance at all, and it doesn't matter. You can still come and see us, and we will still see you, irregardless of what you can pay. So you can just walk in our doors and get the health care that you need. And when I talk about health care, I'm talking about traditional primary care, gynecology, women's health, optometry, mental health services. We have all of these. We employ all of the providers ourselves. And being a very large healthcare organization, we have 9 locations in the Delaware Valley region. That's why we're called Delaware Valley. And so for me, I get to go from space to space being grounded in things that have made me who I am. Basketball, healthcare, technology, passion, obsessiveness, and we can call it a bunch of careers of success.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say it's funny to maybe take a moment to kind of reflect on how your professional world and your basketball world are so intertwined through this idea of healthcare and the way the Rumph, healthcare is such a big part of the Rumph, and obviously healthcare is such a big part of your day job and the work you do, that it's just kind of fun to see how so many things in your life kind of intertwine in a really fascinating and maybe personal way.
Yeah, I'll tell another story about that. So I grew up with asthma, and asthma to the point where every year I would be in the hospital for 2 weeks because my asthma was that bad. And if it not for the doctors, for healthcare coming out with medicine, and then a real good mental health trainer and someone provider who said, you can beat this. Here are some of the things that you can do. I wouldn't have played basketball.
Yeah.
Because my asthma was that bad. And so, this is personal to me to give back. It's not about money. It's not about fame. It's about this saved my life. So let me do what I can to help save the next life in any capacity that I do.
That's fantastic and very well said. Isaiah, we often ask a lot of our guests, or every guest that comes on the show, about their favorite Rumph memory. I do want to sort of enlarge in that question for you, though. As someone who's been around it in a very pointed way in terms of playing in it and having a camera in your hand, sort of split between those two, can you take me through some of the moments that you feel like you've been able to capture that maybe you're proudest of, and then we'll get to maybe your favorite memories?
The moments that I'm most proud of.
And maybe if I could also ask it this way, I asked Jamie the same question of, if you could take pictures or if you could hang up a video on the wall, that what's a couple of years that you might hang up on the wall and memorialize?
The first night in Arcadia.
Tell me about it.
2013, Arcadia. Outsiders said the Rumph couldn't move to a gymnasium and it be packed. They said this is just a local tournament that can't be national. This is a local tournament that is only reserved for Mallory and Uptown. This is a local tournament that you wouldn't get true NBA players to play in. This is a local tournament that you have a good mission, but that's about it. It can't match the Rucker, it can't match the Drew League, it can't match some of those others across the country. And that first night in Arcadia, 2012-13, packed house. This time it was Evan Turner, had the Morris twins, bunch of overseas player. And one of my favorite moments is Flip Murray, and he put on a show. And we were there to capture it. And it went so viral. And that was when I felt like we arrived. And that was one of my most memorable moments, capturing that on the baseline, just watching. Because if you're at Arcadia, they had like sort of a track around it. And it was to capacity to the point where Arcadia's like, we can't let anybody else in.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment I said, oh, we're here.
I'm curious if you remember sort of this side of things. You mentioned going back and forth with Jamie, maybe unspokenly, about trying to be the first one to get it up. Raheem Thompson had come on the show and told some very similar story the same night, and how that was really the time where social media started to become more prevalent in our lives, Twitter in particular. You mentioned it going viral. What do you remember about how social media took on a life of its own for that moment and that night and that year?
Yeah, at that time it was Twitter. It was YouTube, and it was the views. And once you got that up that night, your views are 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 by the next morning, and everybody's talking about it, text messages, phone calls. And then the next night, it was even more packed. We had to turn people away because they couldn't get in.
Yeah.
So it's like you knew that this was like a super viral moment. And then you had people calling Daily News, The Inquirer, people wanting to understand what this was about. Miss Candy talking to The Inquirer. All of this stuff happened after this kind of moment. Yes, things were happening before, but it felt like it went national that night. And I'm telling you, you can look at some of the footage. Flip Murray, he put on a show, and he kind of carried it for quite a while, him and the twins and Hakeem Warwick. I mean, Hakeem Warwick jumped from like the foul line, and it's just like we put it in slow motion, and it wasn't 60 frames per second for all my videographers out there, or 120 frames per second. And you just watched him soar, and it was like just a phenomenal time and weekend.
I'd mentioned before we started recording that before my first Rumph, Mike had sent me an email of like file of pictures you might need, and it was just all MadOptics photos and videos and such. Maybe the Flip Murray, maybe Hakeem Warwick. From that night, do you have a picture or video that stands out in your head or that your mind goes to?
Yeah, for sure. That night, a picture of the crowd
Yeah.
from the top.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's
Just
not what I thought you were going to say.
Just looking down and all those people
Yeah.
and the courts being played. That's one of my favorite pictures that I look at from a grounding perspective. More recently, Jason Tatum. But every year, I never want to miss the players giving Miss Candy a hug. So that would be my third. When James Harden gave her a hug, this is a multi-$100 million man, came to Philadelphia and hugged Miss Candy. It's like, come on, man. It doesn't get any better than this.
It was a really powerful moment.
Powerful.
Yeah.
And I have it.
That's fantastic. That's really awesome. Put the camera down. In your time being around the Rumph, this is the 19th summer. What is the memory or moment for you personally that a favorite or sticks out to you the most?
I have a couple. Some of my favorite moments is when Allen Iverson hugs my sister while she's filming him coming in, meaning he remembered her.
Yeah.
Meaning he recognized what was going on, meaning that MadOptics was known to him. That was a good moment because it's not about me, it's about my family. Being the oldest of six, putting a camera in my sister's hand and her childhood idol actually giving her a hug while she has a camera. Hey, come on, man. I mean, listen.
Yeah.
It just doesn't get any better than that. The
Yeah.
second one would be when Lou Williams, he came with Chuck Ellis, when Lou Williams shot around with my son.
Wow.
That's another good moment. And then my third moment is when I don't remember the artist, but an artist did a rendering of Danny, and Mike presented it to Miss Candy and Marcus at center court in a packed gym.
Mm.
These are my moments. You know, I talked about before some of the creative content that we've captured, but these are moments that people may overlook, but that keeps me coming each and every year, that it's more than basketball. And these are some of the things that a Rumph can do. It's family-oriented, gives opportunity to those that may not get opportunity any other place else. You know, some of the things we talked about when it just were two in the gym, now it's hundreds, maybe potentially trying to get media credentials, pack baseline. These are the things that the Rumph can do. Local photography. I've had the pleasure to work for CBS from a media perspective. I had the pleasure to work for ESPN. Not many people get that opportunity. And so for them to be able to come to the Rumph and feel like that's their ESPN, that's their CBS, that means something to me. To watch you and Mermel do what you guys are doing, that means something to me. That means the effort, the sweat, the late nights were all worth it.
You had said it there before, but I mean, so much of this conversation has been centered around this, again, this sort of intertwining of basketball and healthcare and how worlds combine. But family is really at the root of everything. And I think in my own experience, I'm sure you can kind of speak to it too. And I think for most people that spend enough time around the Rumph, that family and being in a place that really wraps its arms around you is sort of the most magical part of it all. Taking interest, but really family is the one that kind of brings us all together in a really beautiful way. And you mentioned, you know, each part of sort of business venture that relates to each of your kids and the family that comes together with on the court, off the court, through the Rumph, and all that is really, really cool to see, and how it's evolved and how it's grown and how it brings in so many different people in different parts of the world. It's fascinating.
I mean, just going back to what Coach Greg Jackson said at Delaware State University, the way you are on this court is the way you will be in life. And I think, you know, that what you'll see in Justin, Brandon, Sharif Hanford, Sharif Bray, Mike Morek, myself, you will see that that means something, that this is an extended family. We can leave, come back. We know we're family. Doesn't have to be said. And that extends to everybody else. And just watching it to be where it is today is just, it's phenomenal, man. It really is.
Isaiah Nathaniel, Danny Rumph Classic Podcast. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, my guy.
Next, we turn to CJ Wolfe, and we spent some time at the Immortal Vision Studio. CJ Wolfe has been paramount at the Rumph Classic, someone who spends time with activations and cameras everywhere. If you've ever been to the Rumph, you've probably taken a picture with CJ or his team. Enjoy this one. CJ Wolfe, thank you so much for joining the Danny Rumph Classic Podcast. How are you, man?
I'm good, bro. Thank you for pulling up to the studio.
Yeah. Appreciate you having us out. Let's start there. Tell us a little about me. We're in the Immortal Vision Studio. Tell us a little about this space, kind of maybe the inspiration behind it and how this all came together.
The space was built for individuals like you, right? You in Philadelphia, you need a space to rent, you need a space to be a part of a community, and you need a space to really enhance your skills of creativity. I just created that in a one-stop shop here at Immortal Vision Studio. So we've been here for 3.5 years in a warehouse building in Kensington. We've done a lot of cool stuff. We connected a creative agency to it, where we can work with brands and companies. And what we do throughout those 80 rentals that we are doing a month from local photographers, we kind of see their talent, see where they are, and connect them to job opportunities and programming so they can enhance their skills.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to create a place that I never had coming up in Philadelphia, and just wanted to like start it from there and, you know, create history from that.
Yeah, you guys do a lot of dope work, and I think that, I mean, obviously everything you do is kind of centered around creativity. This studio we're in right here, in the Immortal Vision Studio, but this space in particular, I mean, obviously there's a lot of beautiful pictures, we got a lot of books, and there's a lot that goes into creating a space like this. Mm-hmm. Take me through some of the pictures, you know, that are seen around this studio and some of the inspiration of building this specific little set.
Yeah, of course I could have named it CJ Wolfe Studio, right? But I wanted something like more meaningful.
Yeah.
But it was important that I kind of put my footprint on it. So when people walked in, I want them to kind of see my story and my life behind my lens, and also just put my footprint on it. So like some of the images of like Meek Mill holding up a Puma basketball, that was so cool to me, because not only that is Meek Mill, but that picture shows him in North Philadelphia doing a basketball court, you know, restoration in North Philadelphia, and seeing kids, seeing their childhood idol, me being able to capture, you know, someone like Meek Mills. And Mural Arts of Philadelphia kind of collaborated with Dream Chasers, and that's at the time when I was working as a photographer for them, and I was able to document that. So it was so many cool pieces inside of this photo. I see one guy from an organization from Nomo in the back of it. So it's like all these Philadelphia pillars in this one photo, with a guy behind Meek Mill taking a photo of him while I'm capturing him. It just was so cool. So I just wanted to show people kind of my realm of my work, and for one, show them anything is possible as coming up as an amateur photographer, but secondly, show them like you can do it as well.
Yeah, to go back to the Meek photo, it feels like that's sort of at the core of a lot of what you're trying to do, where there are people and places that are up here that mean so much, and maybe on a bigger stage, and it's like, okay, as CJ Wolfe, as Immortal Vision Studio, as your team here, what can we do to bring that to North Philadelphia? What can we do to sort of centralize that to a place that maybe doesn't get as much time and energy into these kinds of things? Is that fair to say?
Exactly. It's always like when I create, well, a camera allows me to bring so many different worlds just into a photo.
Well said, yeah.
So that's what I enjoy. It allowed me to travel to different countries, different states, you know, travel, you know, like privately and things like that. But it's about bridging that gap to and bringing it to our warehouse, you know, building in Kensington, where people may not even seen a photo of Meek Mill or know someone that actually took a photo of him. Like we get kids in here all the time, like, oh, that's Lil Uzi Vert. Oh, that's Jason Tatum. And It's like, that's pretty cool, just to let them know that.
For sure. Yeah. And there's a lot of sort of intertwining fabric between your story and your work and the Danny Rumph Classic, and the way that, you know, sort of come together, both with the Rumph, but also the community, the North Philadelphia community and the Philadelphia community at large. I want to start with your journey before we get into all that. Before you were in creative the creative space. You were a financial advisor. You were a math guy. You were, pushing pencils, whatever this, what's the saying?
Yeah.
Pushing pencils all day. You were in an
Yeah.
office job. Tell me about that, how you got involved in that, and then in tandem, sort of how you found your way into here.
Yeah, so it all started when I was in college. My freshman year, my first roommate, his name was Thomas. So Thomas, totally different background than me. He was from Scranton, PA, went to Scranton Prep, totally different background. But there was a few key takeaways that I took away from Thomas. Our first time meeting each other in our college dorm room. In college, you don't know who your roommate is. You look them up on Facebook and you kind of see. So we just was talking, and I met his father. I met his family. I went up to Scranton a few times, and I seen a whole different life that I came up in.
Okay.
So I started reading books. He started, recommending me books. He started, showing me different career paths. And I was communications minor in marketing. So I always wanted to do something creative and create concepts and commercials for brands. But that just was a dream of mine. I never really knew that could really happen. I just picked it because I went to school for basketball and communications and marketing. So I started reading books, and Thomas, he was a business major. And I realized quickly that I could achieve anything that I wanted to do as long as I just read and get the information. So when I came upon this job as a financial advisor, they talked about how you can create your own schedule, get your own clients, and build it from there. And it was I have an entrepreneur spirit since day one. And I'm this sounds super cool. And it leaves me time on the side to do photography, which I was pursuing. So every day was typical 9 to 5. Well, really 9 to 11 because I'm dealing with clients. And it was pretty cool because I learned a lot of lessons from that. And working with other financial reps within Northwestern Mutual where I worked at taught me so many different skills that was needed in the world, and most importantly, building a business. So I really enjoyed that time after school and being in corporate finance.
CJ, a lot of what I like to do on this podcast is gas up our guests and say nice things about them. I think that it's such a rare combination to have someone with, you worded it well, the entrepreneurial spirit, but so much of your life has been about being creative, and that's sort of at the core of who you are. And with this, you've been able to mend the two. You mentioned finding a lot of that entrepreneurial path when you got to college. When did the creative side of you first start to germinate in you when you were growing up?
It was always into me.
Yeah?
I was always a leader, but sometimes I probably didn't use that leadership qualities in a positive way.
Okay.
Growing up all the time. But I was always creative. But growing up in the inner city of Philadelphia, especially in North Philly, right? When you're a basketball player and you try to do something different, it's kind of why are you doing that? You play basketball. You ever heard that?
Stay in your lane kind of thing.
Yeah. You ever heard that? Dribble the basketball and shut up type of thing?
Unfortunately, I have.
So that's the vibe that it was. It wasn't intentionally or anything, but I was popular.
It felt like that was almost the nature of it. Yeah.
Exactly. I was
status
popular,
quo, if you will.
Exactly. I was popular in high school due to basketball. So when I wanted to wear different fashion items, when I had, the ice creams and, the skinny jeans and stuff like that before they actually hit, it was what are you doing? You play basketball. Why are you trying to do anything else?
Yeah.
So that kind of made me not want to do other things and just stick with basketball. When I was able to leave my environment and be in college and other people were able to accept me for who I was, I started to instill a thing called confidence. And then now that took me where I can be able to chase my dreams and believe in myself. And that's what kind of happened. Now I kind of felt in the same trap because I'm in school and now it's suit and tie, get a job after, work your way up in corporate. So now I'm seeing a different light. But when I started to be my authentic self within my corporate job and I expressed to them, I want to do content around stocks and life insurance and all that stuff that wasn't really accepted due to corporate
Which is
compliance.
a little crazy to think about now in 2024 because, with the age of social media, growing so much, that's become a norm, but continue.
Yeah, so within the corporate compliance, that wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
So basically, I was hit from my mentors, you want to be a great photographer or you want to be a great financial advisor? And I'm like, I can do both.
It
And
sort of goes back to the idea about, in high school when you were playing basketball
Exactly.
or, you were showing off different fits, whatever. It's like, how
Exactly.
can I mend both? Continue.
Exactly. So now I always put these things together. I'm like, in my life, I've been doing better since I graduated from college. Like I had better experiences, but I'm dealing with the same kind of issues just on a different level. And I got to a point, especially when COVID happened, I'm like, what if I can try both? And at that time, both wasn't really clear to myself nor others, but I knew it could probably be possible. And 3.5 years later, it's possible.
Just had your 3-year anniversary party,
Yeah.
which is crazy to see how far it's come and how quickly, and I'm sure time flies with all of it. The transition into Immortal Vision Studio, I mean, you were, like we said, you're working in corporate America, and if I read correctly, your boss had told you, like, there's no money in being a
Photography.
creative in photography. When you hear that, what's your response to that? How did that motivate you? How did that sort of change your path?
Yeah, it's kind of like, I kind of compare, it's crazy. I just was talking to someone earlier today, and I kind of compare it to like doing free work for people, right? So when I first started, and even with the Rumph Classic, like I tell you, like my first year I was doing photography, I couldn't get into like the media, like get a media pass or anything. I didn't know, but I was like studying, seeing how I can inquire it, right? Then the next year, for like the next 4 or 5 years, I was doing it for free, right? And one thing about free work, I love free work coming up as a photographer. A lot of people may say, why? You're doing it for free. So in this part, yes, I'm doing it for free, but I know I can use it for my portfolio. I know I'm meeting people, but most importantly, I'm getting experience. So when my boss told me there's no money in photography, I'm like, hey, I just got all of the experience that you taught me in sales, that you taught me with people, and all your life experiences that you've been doing for 30 plus years. You let me into your world to get that information.
Yeah.
And one thing about me, information is dangerous because now I can take that information and apply it to myself. So my boss, he had about 50 to 60 reps working under him. You do your sales, you do your commission, and he get a piece of it. And I'm like, we can create a collective and an agency that does the same thing.
Sort of operates in a similar
but it
manner.
can be going towards what people love to do.
Yeah.
And I can go to freelancers and creatives.
Where you can have people come in, and there's almost like that threshold of, yes, it's especially in today's day and age, like it's hard to do much free work, but that in photography and in creative, once you can quickly learn the skills and show that you can do it, then you can use a lot of the skills that you would learn in corporate America and in sales and such to, okay, now I can show that I can do it, and you can kind of help, for lack of a better analogy, like a bird leaving its mother in the tree or whatever,
Yeah.
that you can help build people up and help send them into the world in really fascinating ways.
100%.
Which is really, really cool. So
Yes,
to
sir.
sort of stick with the theme of the intertwining of the two, what is or I guess take me back, how did you first get involved with the Danny Rumph Classic?
Yeah, I seen it. Well, for one, how I first got involved was I was a kid, and I remember going to Arcadia University, and I seen Deontay Christmas play. And that was one of my favorite players at the time.
And these were your hooper days. This was before you were getting involved in
Yeah, I
corporate
was
America and
catching a
creative and
bus.
such. Yeah.
I probably was like in 8th grade or beginning of 9th grade. I was catching a bus. Sometimes I would, because the championship games be late. And that's a Sunday, I believe.
Monday. Championship Monday.
Monday. So it's a school night.
Yeah.
Next day school, stuff like that. Or camp or whatever, right? It's during the summertime. But I would like sneak out the house and like go to the game. And I was a spectator for so many years because the same vibe that I get for the media pass, you'll see people, it's like a reunion. It was the same thing in high school. I would see people I'm playing AAU with. I would see my coaches. I would see people that I grew up with. So that same spectator vibe, it was the same thing. So I was a spectator for like 3 years, probably 3-4 years.
When did things evolve from I'm a fan, I'm a spectator, I'm just loving the game and loving Philly hoops, to now you're starting to get more of the creative side of things and getting more involved and taking photos and such?
I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, it was at LaSalle University, and James Harden played, and I see everybody doing photography, like on the sideline. I never really paid it any mind prior when I was a spectator because I was playing basketball. When James Harden came, I believe I was in college. And I seen everybody taking photos. I'm like, yo, that's so dope. Like, what if I bring my camera in? Like, I would have took pictures of James Harden. This is prime time James Harden, man. And I'm like, yo, I got to find a way to get down there. And probably like 2 years later or like the next year, I was able to, bring my camera in.
How did it evolve from there? I mean, again, there's a lot of pictures in here, some great players at the Rumph. There's some great memories. How did your time in that space evolve into activations and just being able to do so much more in that space and becoming a constant figure?
Yeah, so I understood how much hard work it took for me to like just get on the sideline. Like I really appreciated it. And when I was doing it, I was making sure I was staying up every night until like 3 a.m, giving all the players their images. Your Shannon Givens, your DJ Newbills, your Brandon Austins that I went to school with. Everybody that played, I made sure I DM'd them on Instagram, say, here go your photos. If you do anything with them, just tag me.
Yeah.
Just tag me. And this was like early stages, like, and I just kept grinding. And I treated every weekend, every time Danny Rumph came around, I treated it as such. I'm making sure I'm at every game. I'm making sure I'm shooting. I'm making sure I'm studying who's who. When special guests come through, Jalil Beats, right? I'm making sure I'm taking pictures of him. Whoever looked important or whoever like on that VIP sitting, I'm making sure I'm
whoever
taking
is
pictures.
important too, because I try to look important. Doesn't mean I am, so.
Anybody that looks important, right? I'm making sure I'm taking those photos, but I'm staying up.
Yeah.
And I'm studying who's who, and I'm sending it to them. And I think with the Rumph team, Mike Morak, he kind of just seen that over the years, and I'm just doing it because that's what I love to do. And then, with anything in life, you look at how can you evolve or, make things bigger. And when it comes to the activations, when it comes to allowing other photographers being able to bring their cameras in and opening up that space, I was the same way. I didn't know how to do it. It's just one day I walked up to the line and I just was begging for like 30 minutes to bring my camera in, and they finally let me. But it was that one shot. And that's why I created Immortal Vision Studio to kind of, hey, you probably want to shoot the Rumph. You don't know how to do it. You don't know how to inquire for a media pass. You don't know who's giving out the media passes. You need to meet someone cool like Sam and, Murmur. So, like, let me introduce you to that.
Yeah.
But just make sure you're doing the good work, making sure, you're getting that quick turnaround time. And you never know what that may do for someone.
So the people that do come through the Rumph, I think a lot of them see sort of what's going on with Immortal Vision Studio these days, the setup in the corner, the studio that you guys are able to build. Take the studio out of here, out of North Philly, and take it to the Rumph. People that aren't always there, maybe don't necessarily know as much about it. Can you explain a little about the studio that you bring there, the mobile studio, the cards you guys make, and what you do for people there?
Yeah, so what we do with the studio, we just want people to understand what our 2,000 square foot boutique space looks like and what it feels like. And we try to just to sit that there outside of our 4 walls. So we create like a player's locker room type of feel where you can get interviewed, you can get some inspiration of other photos that are taken over the years. You can see some custom collectibles and you take photos. Our biggest thing is setting up a backdrop where you can take photos. And not only that you can take photos, but you can see the photos that you are taking right there on the spot, and then we send them to you on the spot. And it's been great for us because it allowed us to kind of not only get clients from it, but most importantly, do what the Rumph is there to do. And that's to educate people on how to save the next bright star and give them a great experience on basketball in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And that's what it should feel like. Like, it's like our all-star weekend here in the city. And what we want to do is just create dope activations to combine photography and basketball together.
That's really awesome. CJ, every guest we have on this podcast, we ask them, and you've been around a long time, so I know you got a couple. What is your favorite Danny Rumph classic memory? Everyone's got one. What is yours?
Easy.
Yeah?
This easy. This is when Mark and Tatum.
Yeah, Mark 50?
Yeah, 50 and Tatum was going at it.
Yeah.
I got the video. They was going back and forth. Like, I think Mark came down. He made a shot. Tatum made a shot. Then Mark made another shot. It just was great basketball. Like, it was, Tatum, Jason Tatum, he's one of those. And, Mark 50, a D3 kid, like, trying to prove his stripes and not backing down.
Went back and forth, the champ.
Back and forth. And that's what Philly basketball is about.
Yeah.
And for me, not only that Marcus is my friend, not only that Tatum is a guy that I enjoy watching his game, but it really just showed what Philly basketball is about, being gritty, not backing down, and we're going to go at it on the court. And then after, hey, good game and, stuff like that. So that was like one of my favorite moments. So many moments throughout the 19 years. I got to experience about like 7 or 8 of them, but that's like my number one, being able to like capture that and see it up front and close it up.
CJ Wolfe, Danny Rumph Classic Podcast. Thank you so much, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you for
Appreciate
having me.